Welcome back to our second set of sessions at the National Youth Festival 2022, a unique national initiative to fuel the minds of young Indians. It is day two, and I'm your host for the session, Bharat Jain. And through the subject of indigenous and ancient wisdom, we have thus far known our roots, how the Indian civilization flourished, how the lesser known histories and heroes have shaped our present. And it only intrigues me to stretch a bit and ask a question. You must be wondering, what is that? Well, my question goes like this, that can we apply India's indigenous and ancient wisdom in the field of business? And can it help India's entrepreneurs carve a big business? Well, let's find out with our presenters for this session, who are our guests. Our first guest is a new age Ayurveda entrepreneur who's reaping the benefits of India's indigenous and ancient wisdom. I might as well even call him an Ayurvedapreneur. So, directing his thoughts to the theme of the session, can India's indigenous and ancient wisdom be big for Indian entrepreneurs? Is founder and CEO of Dr. Vaidya, Mr. Arjun Vaidya, who is in conversation with a man who has featured in Forbes 40 under 40. He is an impact leader, a social entrepreneur. He's the founder and CEO of Vat Vriksha, a social enterprise which is helping tribal and marginalized artisans sell their traditional vocations and indigenous products to to a wider sections of the audience in the community, and they're also imparting entrepreneurial training. Well, he's none other than Mr. Vikash Das, and he's in conversation today with Mr. Arjun Vaidya, and moderating this session is our moderator, Alisha Sachdev. Please welcome them on your screen.
Hey guys, thank you so much.
Hi everyone. It's indeed a privilege to address such a huge audience. So yeah, looking forward to
And the
it.
privilege is mine as well, gentlemen. Vikash Dash and Dr. Arjun, Vaidya. Of course, Dr. Vaidya's has been a brand that has touched, most of us at some point or the other. You've built a very successful business out of it. It was acquired by the RPSG group at a very handsome valuation also. Vikash, you are a contemporary social impact entrepreneur. May our tribe grow, but as a business journalist, I have to admit that we don't see many people, who actually do a lot of work, on the social, enterprise side, or actually even have or harbor ambitions of turning those businesses big. And mostly when we're talking about India's entrepreneurial talent, we're talking about, the potential that India has. India as a funding destination, even we're mostly looking westwards. We're trying to emulate a software tech, IT-led sort of growth. You are pioneers in what you do, which is, tapping into the ancient reserves of wisdom that this country has. Um, so let me start with you, Arjun. You have, of course, acquired a wealth of knowledge, in Ayurveda, which runs generations, which has run through generations in your family. And you turned that into a very successful, name brand as well. For all the young people who are listening in, because we're talking on the occasion, continuing from the National Youth Day. What would you say to them? When they think of entrepreneurship, perhaps Ayurveda or going back to indigenous wisdom might not be the first thing that they think about when it really comes to building about scalable, profitable businesses. You've done it, and what would be your one key takeaway from the journey you have had, and how would you think that the youth can also benefit from tapping into the ancient wisdom like you did?
Look, I think it goes back to why I ended up doing what I was doing, right? So I come from a legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda. My dada, my great grandfather were Ayurvedic doctors. They had a very successful Ayurvedic clinic. I was personally cured of asthma using my grandfather's formulations. And so it meant more to me than just a science, right? It meant more to me than just family legacy. I went to the US in 2009 for my undergrad. I went to a college called Brown University. And there, like in my first few weeks, I went for a yoga class, and I had a Dutch friend of mine teach yoga, right? And to me that was cool, but it didn't make sense. And I saw like
Sure.
yoga mats, yoga pants, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, Lululemon, yoga music, multi-billion-dollar industry in the US. And I thought to myself, like, Indian companies have nothing. India has not taken yoga to the world, right? And so it made me feel, and I remember calling my grandfather from campus and saying, hey, like, we have to ensure that India takes Ayurveda to the world, because India didn't take yoga to the world. Yoga has gone to the world, but we didn't have much to do with it. And so with that thought process, I came back to India. And through the journey from 2016 to 2020, we built a large company. We scaled very nicely. But I think what we did correctly was take ancient wisdom, indigenous wisdom, and repackage and rebrand to appeal to modern consumers. And if I was to sort of break down the journey, the important part of this was what my grandmother saw as normal and common use of amla, taj, lavang, elaichi, jaifal. We made cool and accessible to modern consumers. And we have so much more in India that we can repackage and rebrand to appeal to modern consumers. I am very, very patriotic. I wear this band of India on my hand every day. My phone cover is the India cricket jersey. And I want to see hundreds of thousands of people take what we have as traditional legacy and take it to the world, or at least take it to modern consumers. So my takeaway would be value what we have, see what we have, and see how we can make it appealing to modern consumers.
I mean, that's a great note to take off on, really. And I think the anecdote you mentioned about, seeing yoga being practiced as a sort of exotic science from India with no Indian really telling you how it's done. I think that's bizarre. And a lot of us has probably encountered that. Um, Vikash, you have also, had a career in, software. You were working with IBM, if I'm not wrong. But you decided that you had to come back to your roots because, sure, you were satisfied perhaps with your career, but then you could have done so much more, is what you realized. Um, Seeing the tribal, community around you, this is one of the things I read about you was that, you saw that they have grown precious little, when perhaps, you were a child and, and how you grew through the years, the community perhaps stayed pretty much the same and they weren't growing perhaps as fast as the rest of India was. What was your motivation to really come back home and then, draw from this community and turn that into, a business?
Sure. So yeah, I was having pretty much successful career in IBM. I was in London and then Paris. Then after that, so as in Eastern India we have this Durga Puja. So I visited my home during Durga Puja and I saw tribal women were not allowed to inside premises to worship goddess. So that was sort of sheer hypocrisy for me because you worship goddess and then you don't allow women to worship. So when I sort of talked to those women, they said we don't have money, and then I decided to go to their village, and there I saw that they are very good artisans, and but then they have no connectivity to market. They have no market access. They don't have raw materials. So that is when I decided to sort of stay in their village for 3 months and to do field research. And that is when I realized that I have to start a viable social enterprise rather than starting a conventional non-charity model. So that is when I started a social enterprise. So social enterprise is like at the intersection of business and impact. So that is when I started. And fast forward to now, that old woman who was not allowed to enter inside the premise, now she is an entrepreneur. And we have supported and created many such entrepreneurs in tribal hinterland of India. So that was
Great.
the motivation.
So Vikash, how long ago was this that you, decided to spend those 3 months, in the village? And then, from that point on, have you been able to bring sort of, raise funding, bring investors on board, give us a little sense of how the business has
Yeah.
also expanded since then.
Yeah, sure. So it was in 2014 when I spent 3 months in those villages. But then let me tell you, in Odisha only we have 45 tribes. So with different culture, different language. So what would work in one community that may not be working in other community, right? So we spent like around 1 year for research, and moreover we were operational in Naxal infested village. We got death threats, and and tribals were not supporting us initially because they have been exploited by NGOs and by government officials and whatnot. So
Naturally,
that is
yeah.
when I decided, yeah. So that's why I wanted to get that trust back, So I made them the partner. And when it comes to investing, so we started with like our bootstrapping business. Then also I invited those women to invest. So we created a fund there, and then the women entrepreneur who wanted money, they will be taking money from that fund. So gradually we grew our business like that. We started our business like that, and then gradually we got into investment. We got investment, pretty good investment.
Right. You're correct to mention that it's a very complex sort of community to also understand, and everyone functions extremely differently. And the mistrust would also be rampant, like you said, because there is always that element of are they trying to build a business out of us? Because helping them and then making them sustainable, making them sustain themselves on their feet is quite a different story. Coming back to you, Arjun, you were mentioning how you gave that call to your grandfather when you saw a Dutch friend come to you and try to introduce yoga to you. Um, you then thought that a modern packaging to ancient wisdom can really translate into good business, and that's something that you would want to pioneer instead of having someone else do it. I want to understand. You also went to Brown. I mean, sure, Ayurveda is a legacy, that your family has. Weren't you tempted to, perhaps venture into other fields, also? Because, we began this conversation by how there is, a very great allure of how big businesses can only be built in certain areas, like tech, software, it's basically things like that. We come from that mindset more often than not. How did you beat that? And then the business that you created also to bring more people behind your vision. What went into that? You muted, Arjun.
I think, Alicia, great question. So I actually didn't go straight into Ayurveda after college, right? I finished college in 2013. I came back to India. I worked in private equity for 3 years at a fund called El Capital, specifically focused on the consumer sectors, the private equity arm of the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy group. And I think there I spent a lot of time understanding the Indian consumer as well, right? So I left an India which was obsessed with imported products, came back to an India which was happy to consume essentially Indian brands. Government change, Ministry of Ayush was created. Ayurveda was undergoing a renaissance, right? From 2014 onwards. Hundreds of thousands of customers like you were interested in Ayurveda. So all of this macro was sort of supporting the journey as well. And then from a micro perspective, actually, unfortunately, my grandfather passed, right? And so my father is in a completely sort of separate business. He runs a business in the jewelry and watch space. And so I just thought to myself that, look, it's my responsibility to take forward this legacy, because if it skips 2 generations, it dies. Right. And so with that thought process, and obviously the itch to do something on my own, and the background thought that my grandfather had cured me of asthma, I took on this legacy. I took on this business. In 2016-17, doing a new age Ayurveda business was unheard of, right? Like Ayurveda was dominated by large brands, and so a lot of people thought that it was a really bad idea. It was not one of those modern, attractive businesses that young people were doing. But and to be honest, when I went to meetings, like in the early stage part of my company, I would not shave because I was 24 and a half years old, and people would say, hey, where's the CEO? Bring your CEO and come to the meetings, right? So it's not an industry which is categorized by young people. But I think part of that made it fun as well, right? Part of that made it interesting that, look, nobody believes that we can make this happen, but with that, we have to make it happen. And so went on the journey. The first couple of years was really difficult because establishing product market fit, convincing customers, building value. But once we figured out our product market fit, I think there was huge adoption, and really sort of understood that high quality Ayurvedic care and products were not available at the touch of fingertips in a larger part of India. And so Dr. Vaidya's was not built as a tier one metro business. 82% of Dr. Vaidya's consumers came from outside the top 10 cities. And if you ask me, that's the real value we created.
Right. Again, there's a lot of insight there, about how, you can use experience, that you have gained elsewhere, like in your case, private equity on the consumer side. And then you use those insights also to, build the business. It's important for young people, particularly, because there's often an apprehension to take a plunge into any sort of entrepreneurial space, let alone one that, like you mentioned, is dominated, by and large by, people that's practicing the trade, not your demographic at all. So to come into that shot, that makes it fun, but it also takes a little bit of extra courage to be able to make those decisions. Vikash, again, I'm just going back to the point of courage, and then the temptation to not stay with fleshing out your career when you already have something going for you. Now there are young people listening in. There is, of course, an element of risk involved whenever you're starting, any enterprise. Particularly, in a social impact enterprise, your motivation is not only business, you're also driven by seeing impact. For those people who are, motivated by impact, but perhaps don't know how to yet create a business out of it, what is your, bit of wisdom for them? What's a good place to start making a difference? And then perhaps also start to take it towards, a business or a profitable enterprise.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, of course, it was very tough. When I started out initially, in fact, my parents, they were quite skeptical about this idea that, so in fact, in Hindi, they were saying like, हमने इतना पढ़ाया, then आप artisans के साथ दर्जी काम कर रहे हो, and like that. So, and वो भी आदिवासी जगहों में. तो फिर, it was very tough. And of course, I had my self-doubts as well. Am I doing the right thing? So, of course, skepticism would be there. But then you have to take this plunge, as you rightly pointed out. So I was very much motivated to solve this problem. So first, I will advise young folks out there that take the plunge. That I will solve this problem. Be focused, be persistent. It's not going to be a very easy journey, because people will try to, because naysayers would be there. They will try to pull you up, and you just have to be very confident that you have to be very patient. Like, I will solve this problem, and then you shouldn't be just running after money, because when you solve this problem, people will notice you and money would follow you. So money shouldn't be the main motivation for starting enterprise, because oftentimes when I talk to young folks, they say, oh, we don't want to do job, or maybe we don't want to work under a boss, or maybe we want to earn money, lots of money, that's why we want to start an enterprise. But that shouldn't be the motivation. First thing is, you have to solve that particular problem, and how you are going to make that impact creation. So that was the main motivation why I started my social enterprise. And it was very, very tough, because when you work in an air conditioned office, and then after that going to those dense
Yeah.
jungles and Naxal infested villages, death threats, whatnot, like wild animals. I even remember, staying, sleeping, under a tree. So it was very, very tough. Your voice, you are muted.
My apologies. So, I can only imagine doing all of that, and you've, sort of really spent time in the wild, and I don't mean wild, in the literal sense, in the wild, in the sense that, it's uncharted territory for a lot of people, who once leave their hometowns, to start off a conventional career and to come back and, also, there's expectations to be met on, a lot of sides. But again, coming back to you, Arjun, what really intrigued me about what you said was that there was a personal benefit that you had seen, from Ayurveda. It had benefited you. And, your advice right at the beginning, you said, to young people would also be to not take the wisdom we have for granted. I think that that's something we do very, very often, whether it's the, little concoctions that our parents would do for us at home, which actually do cure us, or whether it's, the science of yoga that, we have been exposed to, right from our days in school. We haven't ever thought of it, as, the treasure that it really is, So, in the time that you have spent building out, Dr. Vaidya's, did you see that there was perhaps a sort of a disconnect, from what our country had to offer us in terms of these sciences and solutions. In our effort to, I wouldn't say, emulate the West, but be progressive, because we inevitably end up, looking westward when we think of things like that. So, to the youths that you have interacted with, did you see this as a prominent disconnect?
Look, I think it was clear at that time that it wasn't the most attractive, fun, exciting thing to get into sort of ancient traditional Indian sectors. But I think over the last 5 years, things have changed significantly, right? I think there's been a lot of government support towards things like Ayurveda, creation of Ministry of Ayush, grants. I remember going to Dubai for a natural and organic products expo. We spent 4.2 lakh rupees as a company on that expo, early stage company, putting up a stall, traveling there, staying there, etc. All of that. We got 2 lakhs back from the Ministry of Ayush. So I think these initiatives really, really help. I think also from a national perspective, right? And if you just think about identity of India, I think it's now interesting, cool, attractive, and exciting for younger people to go back to what's traditionally Indian, right? You're seeing that across the board with new companies coming up. So I think we've taken steps in the right direction. Are we there yet? The answer is no. We have a long, long way to go. As a population, I think sometimes we always look towards the government to solve for this. But I think when people talk to me about what was being done in Ayurveda, as consumers, researchers, academicians, government, companies, corporate sector, everybody needs to come together to work for the propagation of this, right? So if I was to talk about Ayurveda specifically, I would say that we have got some way, but I think until everybody works together to solve this problem of knowledge spreading, right? I'm not even saying create sales, create value, create exports, spread knowledge and increase acceptance, at least in our country, before even taking it global, I think we'll not get anywhere, right? So should be a concerted effort and not just look towards the government.
No, fair enough. Also considering that the last 5 years, like you were mentioning, have seen some sort of an awakening happen. And I think even around us, there is, a big sort of, upswing in just the number of brands that are doing, work around, Indian made products. And just going back to our own kitchens and then concocting all sorts of things from that. I mean, it goes into soaps, medicines to cosmetics. All of that is happening. You say, but we're not there yet. And the government, of course, has been doing its bit to support these initiatives. Let's say when it comes particularly to Ayurveda. What role do you think policy making actually also plays, in this, journey for entrepreneurs or for young people, particularly who might not have access to these sciences in the way, let's say, you have had?
Look, I think policy making is important, right? And I think we've taken steps in the right direction. But I think once the policies are implemented, it's our responsibility as customers, as people in the ecosystem, as companies, as people in the corporate sector to also do our bit to propagate it, right? So, for example, if I am going on a trip abroad, I should be carrying a kadha with me and tell 10, 15, 20 people there about what my kadha is, right? That's the only way network effects can work. So I think as a nation of 1.3 billion people, we are now like more than 1/7 of the world, right? If we believe in something, pretty much 16% of the world is believing in that as well. And if 16% can make 32% believe in it, we're 1/3 of the world that believes in something we have to offer, right? So I think we have to realize the power of the size of our country, the power of the youth of our country, and leverage that to really spread knowledge about what we want to spread knowledge about.
No, 100%. I think, our strength is definitely in our numbers. Fortunately, we done very rich in that resource, young people, that is. And, we're also very global people. To that point, I think a lot definitely can be done just by taking these little steps. And, once you start being proud of your, own culture and traditions, I think, that itself is a big step forward. Vikash, for you also, ever since you entered the social impact space, have you seen that there is growing momentum towards more younger people trying to enter this space as well? You said it's, people shouldn't be in it for the money to begin with. It does follow. And there is, of course, more than enough cause to identify and put our forces behind. But do you think that there is a positive trend there?
Yes. So to start with, first I will sort of cite instances in those tribal communities. So seeing these women entrepreneurs we have created, other women they have come forward and to start their own business. So in those grassroots level, we are sort of making changes. So of course, I have worked with many social entrepreneurial ecosystems. So initially it was very tough for us as well. Now we can see like youth are coming and like they are getting mentoring service, and they are studying like in Odisha, Bengal, and Chhattisgarh. If you see, many youth are coming and they want to work with tribal, artillery, and then the pottery. And there is one guy who, in fact, like it was 6 months back, he started his enterprise. So he started with, you must be knowing Muni Gadre's drumstick. So he has the largest drumstick farmland in India now. Just 6 months back, he started, and now he is preparing. He's making medicines out of it, and he's supplying to US and other Western countries. So that's the kind of change. So as a social entrepreneur, we have to be inspiration for others. We have to be very transparent. We have to create that example for others. Then only youth would be sort of getting inspiration from us, and they'll be seeing how we have created impact in our country. So I think we should be the biggest inspiration for them. We should create example for them. Then eventually they will get into this social entrepreneurial field.
Right, absolutely. And, when you talk about these stories of impact, do you see, my question really was, do you see that there are more people trying to do this now than they were, let's say, in 2014 when you started off?
Yes, absolutely. Many people are coming up, like from top schools, colleges as well. They want to make an impact. So, they when they narrate their stories, it's so gratifying. When you make impact, when you make other people's lives, so it's so gratifying. Of course, the mindset change has been happening now, and people from top schools and colleges, they just are not running after money. They want to create. They want to get into this impact space. So that's the good thing. Indian social entrepreneurial ecosystem is going through a revolution now.
Well, I mean, that's very heartening for me to also note. Um, Vikash, can you cite some more examples, like you were of the drumstick business of, where your work has actually been able to create impact, in the community?
My work, like okay, so so we first noted that they have the talent, but they don't have those business and financial skills, right? So we thought of impacting those trainings to them, those women, because they are very smart. I mean, they are jugadu, they are really talented artisans. So we thought we should be providing them business and financial trainings and how to connect them to market, basically how to talk to customers. So that was and after they were so interactive with customers, they designed products, they customized products, and then after that, they managed all the finances. Now, I remember when before starting this venture, they had no voice in their community. Now they are managing their family. So that's kind of impact we have created in tribal communities. If you compare them with other rural communities, but tribals, they were so isolated from our mainstream society. They had absolutely no idea about market. They were exploited by middlemen. So we sort of created the change in supply chain. So now they have access to market. Now they know what the customer needs. So yeah, so mindset change again, among tribal women. So it's really gratifying, when I see women coming to me and they say like, you have made our lives. Of course, we are just the facilitator. They are talented artisans. We just sort of provide them trainings.
And that itself goes a long way. Arjun, when you were when you were in the process of you know selling your business to RPSG, again, you must have been able to gather a lot of insight in terms of just what the funding landscape is or how these businesses are also valued. I would imagine a concern with entrepreneurs, starting out, in, let's say, an indigenous Indian science would be, would global investors or even domestic investors be able to see, value in it, or would be able to assess the correct value of their business? You have said that there is a positive trend there, but how? But what would be your advice to people who are thinking like that and see this as a challenge?
Look, I'll tell you, I think 2013, I came to India and I started working in finance. I then built a company and now I'm an active investor. I'm an angel in more than 40 companies now and also run a venture capital fund. I run the venture capital arm of World Invest in India. Over the last 18 months, what we've seen in early stage ecosystem, both in terms of funding and quality of startups, is unparalleled. I've never ever seen what's happening today. There is huge liquidity, huge belief in the startup space, and very, very high quality of founders executing and building things. I'm personally someone who's very excited about investing in products that cater to Bharat consumers and take what's Indian. I have recently invested in a D2C brand selling pan through Swiggy and Zomato, right? That's the sort of power of things that are coming out. There is no time to be a founder. There is no better time to be a founder than now. Capital is available and chasing high quality executors. What I see is a lot of people who just don't start, have an idea and want capital. No, capital is chasing high quality executors. So ideation is great, but unicorns are built with blood, sweat, and high quality execution, right? And so if you're building something of real value, people will see it today. It's not as difficult as it was in 2017, 2018 when I was raising. So to all young people who are wanting to start, I would say go for it because it's an amazing time to start.
Well, fascinating, and you yourself deserve a lot of credit for that too, for actually creating this space and a lot of faith in that space. So, indeed, capital is available for executors who can deliver. Since you are an investor yourself, the D2C partner is a crazy good idea, by the way. But what are some of the other, areas that investors are really keen on investing in? When it comes to, like I said, areas related to ancient Indian wisdom or Indian-made products or Indian-made sciences or services.
Look, I think in specifically, I'll talk about what I know, right? And I know certain parts of the market better than others, and specifically consumer leaning parts. What I'm really excited about is health and wellness. Still, Ayurveda and other sciences, lots of scope to do new things. Personal care and cosmetics, we have a lot to offer from an Indian standpoint, and so lots of great work being done. Meet a lot of great early stage founders building really high quality products. I think there's a lot of work still to be done on making new age Indian food as well. Food, spices, adding health aspects to those. Our population is eating in a different way than we were eating 10 years ago. And so for me, from a D2C standpoint, I think food, health and wellness, and personal care and cosmetics, a lot of work still to be done on what we have indigenously to be made new age or modern.
Right. Because does that excite you? Because you are also, I mean, the women you work with are also manufacturing products, a range of products. So there are categories that Arjun mentioned. Is that sort of insight that you take, and are you also encouraging entrepreneurs or imparting trainings to actually do more in the food, wellness, better living, cosmetic sort of categories?
Yeah, in fact, we supported one tribal entrepreneur who is working with cosmetics, especially from forest products. So she is making turmeric and sandalwood, and then ragi seeds, and she's making one sort of face cream out of it, and she's very popular, doing that. So this kind of innovation happening in tribal. In fact, they say like this is the indigenous knowledge, in true sense. They have been doing it since like 1,000 years or something, but now gradually they are popular. And one more thing, like black rice, you haven't heard of it, I believe. Even I didn't know about it. So earlier, I remember as a kid, people used to say, "Oh, only poor people have those black rice." So, but now people market. I mean, got to know that black rice is sort of it's good for diabetes patients, and then no starch, no carbs. I mean, very less carbs. So this kind of awareness is happening, and we have to tap those potential, from these remote villages or rural India. So yeah, lots of changes happening now. I mean, I'm really excited. Like this Indian startup ecosystem is, as Arjun pointed out, this is the best time to be an entrepreneur.
Right. And, while you are working, to impart training and actually build capability within these communities, your efforts also have to, are you also making efforts on the demand side of things? And what are the channels that you actually use to aggregate demand? to bring demand, to these people, and also again figure out the product market fit. It can get a little tricky, because every tribe again functions in a very different way, has their own expertise to be able to scale those things, and make, let's say, global brands or scalable brands out of it. How do you address those challenges?
So obviously it will be tough to manage everything. So we have partner organizations. Suppose there is one venture which is supporting with e-commerce. There is one venture which is supported with designing thing, like how to design handicraft textile product. There is one. So we have many partner organizations. Even government has been supporting us a lot. So we are, of course, this is very complex. I would say this is a very complex ecosystem with lots of stakeholders. So collaboration is the only way you can scale up, and you can make impact, in huge scale. So I would say collaboration is the key thing here.
Right. Arjun, I mean, do you agree? You are investing currently. Is that advice that you give to companies that you invest in a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, you can't do everything on your own, right? And so working with the ecosystem, collaborating with folks like Vikash, and sort of taking forward the message together, I would totally agree.
Right. And we've spoken a bit about the opportunities in this space now, and I think what's also important is to address the challenges right at the outset. For people who might be listening in, there may be questions that they would have. You have spoken about the challenges in the sense that you were young when you were attempting to raise funding. For a space, perhaps at that point there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm or the amount of capital that's available today. What were the challenges that you faced? Particularly because the people that you were perhaps trying to market these products to, were not really used to perhaps seeing Ayurveda packaged as it was, as you were selling them. People take it for granted. They think I can, I have a cold today, I can, do a kadha. Why would I spend money on this? Or is it even true Ayurveda if it's coming to me packaged in this form? How did you tackle those challenges?
Yeah, look, I think when you're starting something new, building consumer trust is really, really important. And so using what you have to communicate the benefits of your product, your company, your legacy, the quality of your product is really important. And then once you have a set of loyal customers, using their insights, feedback, and how the product has experienced them to talk to more customers, that's important. Look, I think the 0 to 1 journey is the more difficult one than the 1 to 10 journey, right? And so in a cluttered ecosystem where there are hundreds of brands and customers being bombarded with information from people across the board, whether it's TV, whether it's their phone, whether it's their iPad, whether it's billboards, you see hundreds of different pieces of information from different companies. To be able to stand out in that perspective and make your brand stand out, I think that's the biggest challenge. But I would say if you were to break it down, right, if you are able to genuinely deliver value to customers and communicate it in the right way to other customers, you should be able to do something. And sometimes we overcomplicate this as well, right? Sometimes we overthink this as well. But really, if you are someone that resonates with, let's say if I resonate with you, and I'm building a high quality product that adds value in your life, why would you not go and tell 100 people about it, right? So I would say think about your customer very deeply, speak to your customer, and communicate the impact and value that you've created on that customer. That will be able to help you scale. But definitely building trust for a new brand in a new space, it's not easy.
Vikash, same question to you, really. You've spoken about challenges that were unique to you in the sense that, living in a community that you did not have exposure to early on, and all the challenges of transitioning from a relatively cushy life to, a life like that. But on a more macro level, in the space that you operate in, what are the challenges that you generally encounter, and how, have you been able to tide over them?
So one more, of course, we were working in remote locations, so there was this challenge of logistic. Secondly, that emotional connect was not there because they were so isolated from our mainstream society. They thought like we're from a different country altogether, and for obvious reasons, they thought like that. So what we do is we create awareness in our market, like what those tribal products are, how their culture is. So very precisely, like in every product, we have a catalog that sort of narrates the story of the artisans. How her life is and how this product developed, what are the fabrics we are using, organic products. So that kind of story creates an emotional connect between customer and artisans. So that was the key thing. Like otherwise, why would they prefer to buy? I mean, if they are giving their money, right, then money should go for welfare activities, or how it's going to impact the life of artisan. So we thought of coming up with that idea that in every product we would be having the story of the artisan or the story of that product. So that's how we were able to bridge the gap between the market and those tribal communities. So I would say,
Yeah.
yes. So that gap was the main problem. Otherwise, and people were not aware of tribal cultures, their product. So we sort of thought of, bridging that gap, and we have been quite successful in that.
Right. And I mean, no wonder. I think once you know the story of, where your products are coming from, you develop a much, stronger sort of attachment to it. Again, at a more, macro level, what do you think, is the role of social media in all of this? You use your traditional marketing channels also, but we are in an increasingly connected space, and young people are living on social media. They're on the internet. So, how has social media sort of impacted positively, negatively, perhaps, the business that you do, and how pivotal is it that you optimize those channels to create demand also?
So it's good for entrepreneurs like us that we are. We are in the age of social media. With just a click of a button, you can create revolution. So obviously, social media has a bigger role to play. For any enterprises, for that matter, especially entrepreneurs who are into indigenous products. So yeah, social media has a bigger role to play, and especially with the technology. I mean, social enterprise is at the intersection of business and social impact. But if technology comes there, then of course you will be able to scale up your organization. You would be able to make a greater impact. So technology has a bigger role to play there, of course.
Right. Arjun, same question to you. I mean, a lot of businesses operating just by themselves on Instagram itself, or with a perhaps very rudimentary website. We're seeing that is also coming up now, and in great numbers, perhaps more than we would have ever seen before. Your advice to them and your insights in that space, how do you take that and make it bigger?
Look, I think firstly, I would say digital has democratized business, right? You don't need a large offline distribution force, sales force, etc. And you can just, in one place, we deliver orders from Mumbai to 16,500 pin codes in India. That's the power of, and the short span of like 2-3 years, right? So that's the power that you have of digital. For all the founders who are running small Instagram shops, businesses on WhatsApp, etc., there are so many available tools that make your business easier, make you more legitimate. Creating a website is not difficult right now. Using tools like Shopify, WooCommerce are not like we actually, my wife and I, out of passion, teach a cohort-based course on building a D2C brand in India. And I think we're so excited to see the number of people who wanted. Like we got 4,900 people sign up. We could only accept 150 people in the first cohort, but just shows what's there. But like for all those people who are running sort of smaller businesses, just starting on the digital journey, I think use the readily available plug and play tools. There's a lot available for you, and will make your life much easier than what we were doing in 2017, 2018.
Right, certainly. Then again, to summarize, what we've been discussing so far, how far do you, I mean, what is the role that you really see the traditional wisdom that India has? Not just, in terms of the science or the product that we're trying to sell, but just the wisdom, that India has in also running a business. Are there lessons to be learned from there that, perhaps entrepreneurs can tap into?
Absolutely. Look, I think like I had a professor in high school who used to keep sort of talking about how and keep telling us how we can use lessons from Indian mythology in our work, in our studies, and now in business as well, right? And so I think for me, the defining aspect of my business was the advice of elders, like what my dad said, what my granddad said, what my parents, my grandparents said to me. And so I think like for all of us, we just need to step back and see what all we have in terms of culture, history, and legacy, and value it much more, both in terms of what we do in work and business, but also how we live our lives, right? And I think Indian wisdom and tradition, we are fortunate to have such a deep, valuable, and long history of culture, right? And I feel like all of us need to do much more to value it. I've traveled the world and seen the way countries with much less history value their legacy, and I think we have some way to go as a population in terms of the value we ascribe to what we have.
100%. I would 100% agree with you there. I think, it's a sign also of a mature and confident society if we can take pride, in the very rich traditions that we have, and we have so much of it going on, really. I mean, turmeric lattes, really. It should make every Indian flinch that, it's not marketed as haldi doodh everywhere. Because just coming back to you again, what are some of the lessons? I mean, you have also lived in London, like you were mentioning, that you have seen, from your professional journey. And, have you been able to apply some of, the wisdom that just business sense that you have gathered, living in India, operating out of India, and, use that when you work in the impact sector also?
Yeah, I would say the kind of discipline and you have to deliver by this deadline, those things are needed as an entrepreneur as well. I would say not just as a business, even I'm a dancer. So the kind of discipline you have instilled through dance and through your business, I mean, your company, corporate world, those things will percolate in every sphere of life. It helped me manage my resource and time as an entrepreneur, and it helped me connect emotionally with people and how to communicate properly with people, because you have to work with different stakeholders. So there should be transparency, and many things I learned from those business meetings. You have to work with your clients, your partner companies, and of course your higher management. So communication is the skill, and you have to be very transparent about what you are doing and how to. Most importantly, it's not just important to make an impact, but are you monitoring those impacts? So that is very important. So that is when data analytics and like how to play around with data, those are very important, especially to monitor the impact. Because in social enterprise, it's not just about making not just profit generation, making an impact, but are you monitoring like those impact? This is very important. Otherwise, how will you gauge if you're successful or your success? So that is very essential for gauging your success.
Right. And like you correctly pointed out, there's a lot of wisdom from, traditional knowledge and subjects also that one can bring in and apply into new AG impact businesses too. But since we are addressing the youth here, some of them may just be in schools right now. How about them? How do you sort of make them aware of the rich legacy that they have? Sure, they've been exposed to it in some ways at home, through their travels. But do you think that just sort of institutionalizing this a bit, let's say putting it in a curriculum, might help? And that's a question, to both of you, Vikash. Perhaps you can start off.
Yeah, I mean, Ramayana and Mahabharat serials, I mean, those are pretty popular in every Indian household, right? So, Gita, I mean, I would say that's the best scripture or holy book, to draw inspiration from as an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur. If you look at Conch, I mean, which Lord Vishnu holds, right? So Conch, it sort of says that you have to be very transparent, because no matter if any positive thing is coming or negative thing is coming, or if they are starting a war, they will blow Conch, right? So that means that no matter the impact is bad or good, you have to communicate with your stakeholders. And for example, chakra. A chakra is more like you have to cut out bad or negativities from positive things. So many things. And how about Chanakya? Chanakya Artha Shastra and Chanakya Niti, right? So there you get to learn about business strategy and so much more, economics. So yeah, we are gifted, as Indians, we are gifted with those indigenous knowledge. So we should be proud about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's lots of ways to interpret, our mythology also. But because more to the point of, let's say indigenous games, indigenous, songs, poetry. Do you think that that can be introduced, into curriculums, perhaps to make, our students more aware of, the tribal communities that we have and their traditions, and just sort of build that sort of appreciation from an early age. Do you think that's something that could help?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Odisha. It's a tribal predominant state, but I wasn't aware of tribal culture. And their language is, of course, different, but we can't understand the language, right? So, and they speak broken Odia or Bengali or, yeah. So I think, of course, language can't be introduced, or poetry, it can't be introduced. But of course, we can incorporate learnings about tribal culture in our books and all. So it's very much needed. And it's very much needed early on in life, because they are Indians as well. So they deserve, that importance as well. People should know about them. So it's very much needed. Yeah. Hopefully it would be included very soon in our, books and yeah, study materials.
Right. Arjun, do you believe that, just sort of bringing, this science and perhaps, let's say, teaching Ayurveda as a science in some way, things like that could also help, just build appreciation from an early age?
We are already seeing it becoming part of curriculum, and I think it is important to ingrain this culture, because I do believe that there is some knowledge that has been lost over the last 50 or 60 years. What my grandmother knows about Ayurveda is very different from what my friends know about Ayurveda, and so uh, knowledge needs to be spread, and I guess ingraining it from an early stage would make sense. But I think, going back to the point of being appealing and accessible, I think for me it's important that the knowledge is spread in a format that makes it fun and interesting, right? And with the power of digital, with all that we have in the digital ecosystem, I think there are ways to do it now. And that's why you're seeing that there is so much adoption um, of these traditional Indian indigenous sort of culture and tradition, if portrayed or presented in appealing format, right? And I mean, I look at the my nieces and the cartoons they're watching today. When I grew up, I watched only foreign cartoons. Today, you're seeing so many Indian characters with educational content. So I think it has to be presented in the right way.
Absolutely. I think it's important to not feel alienated from your own culture, which bizarrely was something that was happening to all of us. Now, I'd like to, wrap this session by asking you to summarize, again, your learnings from the experience you've had doing business, which taps into the wisdom of ancient India. And how can we encourage today's youth also to participate and look at this as a viable career or a business, that they can create and pioneer? Your word of advice to them and your biggest learnings. Arjun, you first.
Yeah, look, I think it's there are all kinds of things you can do in the ecosystem and all kinds of industries you can enter. But like, if I was to look back at my journey on Dr. Vedya's, and if any of you still buy any Dr. Vedya's products, right, you will see proudly Indian written on the front and center of the packaging for every single product that we sold at Dr. Vedya's. That's the power of sort of taking something traditional indigenous and feeling like building a very valuable business, which is what we did, but also having huge impact and giving back to our society and culture. That's really important. There's a lot to offer. It's not just sort of giving back, it's also highly value creating. But in the process, you can create value for society and also create value from a monetary standpoint. I think that's what's most exciting to me. We have a long way to go. And if there is a long way to go, there's a lot of opportunity as well, because you can only create an opportunity in spaces that haven't been tapped as much. And so my advice would be, look, I think now is the time that entrepreneurship has arrived, that startups have arrived. And now is the time that digital can really make Indian traditional wisdom and culture more accessible to modern consumers. And so go for it.
Absolutely. That's super encouraging. And, it's more than evident that everyone has, everything going for them, whether it's, the social media landscape, our demographic, way too many people in our age group. So there's demand, there's opportunity, and there are the tools. Vikash, again, in about 30 seconds to a minute, how would you summarize your journey so far and your words of encouragement, to young people who would like to start in the social impact space?
Yeah, so there's this thing that people think in social impact space, you won't have much money. I mean, it's not like that. You can have money. You can. The thing is, it's so gratifying to change so many people's lives and to generate impact, right? So, I mean, when you see smiling faces all around, it's like really so gratifying. So, and that material happiness. I mean, I would say that's beyond material happiness, right? When you see people smiling all around and expressing gratitude that you change our lives. I mean, of course, I didn't. I'm just a facilitator. So, yeah, so I would say it's not just about creating your own well being, but creating shared value, right? So, that is very important. Like, you shouldn't be just thinking about your self well being, or you should be thinking about how. People from different parts, like different strata of our country, should be the part of that, development story of our country, right? They should be part. They should be equally be the part of this development story of our country. So yeah, it's and yeah, money is there. I mean, it's not like that. You can definitely earn money, but also you can make an impact. I think that's why young people, they sort of refrain, from getting into that impact space. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. And I'm glad that you were able to tackle it so squarely and say that, sure, don't just run after money, because what you can get in this process is so much bigger than that. You'll get money and, you'll feel so gratified with the work that you're doing. And I think nothing beats that combination. So, Arjun and Vikash, very wholesome conversation. I hope that, people who were listening in were able to, benefit from your wisdom and your experiences also. I think our impact sector is in great hands with you, Vikash and Arjun. I think with the sort of insight that you have and the passion that you have for India-made businesses, I think that there'll be plenty fuel to sort of always keep that fire burning. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. It's been a lovely time speaking to you. Back
Thank
to
you
you,
so
Thank
guys.
much.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the young blood of India, the new age entrepreneurs, in conversation with our moderator, Alisha Sachdev. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your views on can India's indigenous wisdom be big business for Indian entrepreneurs. From this conference room, for now, that's all. You can log on to the other conference rooms and check the conversations that are going on. And do tune in from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. for we have a session on leadership at 26,000 feet by Captain Raghuraman. So stay tuned for that. And that's all from this conference room. Signing off for now, your host Bharat Jain.